Okay, and what we're going to do in this video is talk about this economic law, which is called the law of demand. Now, we should remember what demand is from a previous video, is the quantity demanded of a good that is purchased that people are willing and able to purchase at a given set of prices or at different prices, okay? So just to be clear, we're still on the demand part of the videos, which is the buyer's side of the market. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is draw a demand schedule, and all this does is it shows the combinations of both price of a certain good, in this case t-shirts, and the amount of that good that is bought at different prices. So what I want you to have a look at is you say, okay, well look, at a price of 0, they're giving them away. All right, 6 t-shirts are demanded. Now, I suppose bought is probably the wrong word, but are accepted. At a price of €10 per t-shirt, only 5. And what we notice here is that as the price goes up, the amount that people buy goes down. Now, I'd hope that that would be in some way intrinsically obvious to you, simply because as something becomes more and more expensive, well, 2 things, don't forget, willing and able. Less people are going to want to buy the good because less people can afford it. Okay. Also, other goods become relatively cheaper to t-shirts as the price of t-shirts rise, and people are like, "Oh no, I'm not going to buy a t-shirt. I'm going to buy, a jumper or something instead." Okay. So there's many different reasons, which we will talk about in later videos, why people do this. But I just hope that the logic would be intuitive to you. Why people would buy less of a good as the price falls. Now, sorry, I'll actually go back for one quick second here. So what I'm going to do is, this is the demand schedule, and I've already said it shows the different combinations of price and quantity demanded. It's a table that shows that, and we're going to graph this whole thing on kind of an XY axis. Now, I just want to bring your attention here. First of all, on this axis, on the Y axis, we put price. Okay, now don't forget, the quantity demanded, the amount that people buy, changes as the price of a good changes. And on this axis, we're going to have the quantity demanded, which is the amount of the good that people are going to buy at different prices. So on the price axis, I'm just going to put all the previous prices that we had in the demand schedule. And on the quantity axis, I'm going to put the corresponding quantities that were bought by consumers at each price. So if you look back at the demand schedule, what you're going to see is at a price of 60, nobody bought anything. At a price of 50, 1 was bought. So we go from 50 out to 1 here, and we have this dot. At a price of 40, 2 t-shirts were bought. So 40, boom, and then down, that's 2. Okay, at a price of 30, we have 3. At a price of 20, we have 4 t-shirts purchased. At a price of 10, we have 5 t-shirts purchased. And at a price of free or 0, 6 t-shirts are taken. Okay, so what we do is, if we just join those dots, we get what is called the demand curve. Now, just again to be clear, price is on the y-axis, quantity bought, quantity demanded is on the x-axis, and we label this here with a D1, subscript 1, for just the first demand curve that we're drawing. We also give it a title, which we have here. Now, I'm just going to get rid of those dots, and I'm just going to put a straight line down from 60, which was through those dots, down to the 6, which gives us the D1, the demand curve. What the demand curve shows is the combinations of the quantity bought, the quantity demanded of a good at different prices. Okay, that's what it shows. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to say, okay, how do we use this demand curve? So at a price of 20, if I go straight out, touch the demand curve and go straight down, this tells me that 4 t-shirts were purchased. That is how we use the demand curve, and I'm going to show you another one later on. So as I said, we can see that at a price of €20 per t-shirt, 4 t-shirts are bought. It's important to note that the quantity demanded, which is just the amount bought, depends on the price. As price changes, there is a change in quantity demanded. There you go. Okay, so if we go to a different price, let's say we go to 40, we go out from 40, touch the demand curve and go straight down. And keep these dots perforated, keep these as dots, keep these lines perforated, and we see at a price of 40, 2 t-shirts were bought. Well, what has happened? As the price rose, people bought less. We see that by the slope of the demand curve, that it's downward sloping, because if you went up to 50, you go straight out and down, and there's 1 t-shirt bought. So as price increased, the quantity demanded decreased, and as prices decrease, the quantity demanded increase. So let's look at that. If we drop the price from 40 or 20 to 10, we go straight out, touch the demand curve, straight down, we say 5 t-shirts are bought. Okay, so we saw that from the demand schedule, that as price changes, quantity demanded changed. Okay. In each case, sorry, I have to repeat myself, in each case we have seen that the quantity demanded, the amount bought, depends on the price. When price changed to €40, the quantity demanded changed to 2 units, 2 t-shirts in this case. We're now going to look at a more general case. So you need to be able to draw a demand curve 110%. Okay, you ain't going to do economics unless you can draw a demand curve. So the first thing that before you even draw it is you give it a title. The next thing is you're going to have to draw 2 lines. One going up the page and one going across. We title this axis price. This is where we put the prices, all the different prices of the good, and here we put all the different quantity demanded. So price and quantity. Okay, what we're going to do then is draw a downward sloping demand curve from left to right, showing that as price, well, I won't say anything yet. We're going to say P1, and this confuses students because they say, okay, hold on a second here, we don't know what the price is. All right, and I get that, but just if you go up this axis here and you have a random price, it's not important what the price is. We're trying to show the change in quantity demanded that occurs following a change in price. Well, how would you find out the quantity demanded? Well, you wouldn't find out the exact quantity demanded in numbers because this is a general case, but what you would do is go straight out to the demand curve, straight down, and we're going to label this Q1. The subscripts say this is the combination of quantity demanded at this price. Now, the next question becomes, if price fell, do you think people would buy more or less, and why? Well, I mean, pause the video if you want, but the thing is, if prices fell, if the price of this good fell, what would happen? Well, it has become cheaper, so more people would be able to afford this good. Okay, so that means most likely more people would buy it. Secondly, it's become relatively cheaper compared to other goods because we are assuming a ceteris paribus relationship. More on that in a second. Okay, which means that instead of buying a jumper, people may buy a t-shirt instead. Okay, so what we're saying here is, and there is the law of diminishing marginal utility, which means that they don't have to be, they're paying less per good, and the marginal utility is now relatively higher compared to the price, all the way back to the equimarginal principle videos. So if the price falls, well, we go straight out to the demand curve, straight down, we get Q2. And what I want you to see is that because P2 is below P1, that means that this price is lower. And because Q2 is further to the right than Q1, that means this is a greater quantity. And this should make sense, absolutely true. Well, why? Well, more people can afford it, and it's relatively cheaper, and they have to pay less money to get the same amount of marginal utility. Okay, well, what is the next question? If price rose, do you think people would buy more or less, and why? Well, again, I hope you would see that people would buy less. Firstly, because people wouldn't be able to afford it because it's become more expensive. So some people wouldn't be able to afford it. Another reason is other goods have now become relatively cheaper, which means that now instead of a t-shirt and a jumper being the same price, a t-shirt could be the same price as 2 jumpers. And people are like, nah, it's not worth it. I'll spend my money elsewhere. And finally, the law of diminishing marginal utility, which is saying that now going back to the equimarginal principle, which means that they're getting the same amount of marginal utility, but they have to pay a higher price. And they're like, nah, I'm not going to do it. Okay, so as the price rises, what happens? Quantity demanded falls, okay, for the 3 reasons that we've just talked about. Now, from the above examples, we should notice a relationship between price and quantity demanded. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's good to hear something 3, 4, 5 times, helps to stick in the mind. When price goes up, quantity demanded, the amount that people buy, falls. When price goes down, the amount that people buy rises, which is quantity demanded. Now, the demand curve represents all the different combinations of the amount of a good that people want to buy and the price that they'd be willing to pay for that good. Okay? When we talk about changes in demand or any factor in economics, the term ceteris paribus is very important. What it means is nothing else has changed. So in the previous two examples, when we talked about price rising and price falling, what we're actually saying is that is the only change occurring, and we're trying to measure the change in the amount that is bought, quantity demanded, caused by only a change in price. And that's what we're saying. Nothing else has changed. Ceteris paribus, all else remaining equal. Okay, so nothing else has changed. The only thing that is changing, we're changing one thing at a time, which is the price is changing. Nothing else. Consumers' incomes haven't changed. Nothing else has changed. Okay, so the law that we saw, right, the law of demand, the logic that we saw in the previous graphs, whereas as price fell, people bought more of a good, and as price rose, people bought less of a good. This gives us the law of demand. Now, this is a horribly long definition. It doesn't really need to be this long, but such is life. The law of demand states that with other factors held constant, which is ceteris paribus, an increase in the price of a good or service leads to a decrease in the quantity demand. That means that as price rises, the amount that people buy falls. And as the price of a good falls, the amount that people buy, the quantity demanded, rises. That is the law of demand. The law of demand tells us the quantity demanded depends on the price of the good, okay? When the price of the good changes, this is known as a movement along the demand curve. And be very clear on this, and there'll be more on this in a later video. Only a change in price can cause a movement. Nothing else can cause a movement. So a movement along the demand curve is only ever caused by a change in price.